The Legend of Zelda, a game series whose namesake isn't the main character, an important character to be sure, while despite being a damsel in distress, quite often usually pulls her own weight, but never has Zelda been the star of her own title, until now. Well, except for the CDI games, but I mean, come on. Just a few days ago, or more accurately a month ago by the time I finished this video, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom came out. Now, I don't play new games too often, much less review them. In fact, this is the first time I have ever reviewed a new game before. After playing Ocarina of Time and making a retrospective on it, I've been in a Zelda mood ever since and figured, why not? Before we begin though, I'd appreciate it if you could like the video, subscribe, comment, all that. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at Echoes of Wisdom to see if it's good, where it ranks in Zelda rankings, and if it's worth $60. Because I am so broke right now, I swear this game better be good. The opening is one of those, you know the kind, where you have all the sweet stuff to give you a taste of the later game, only to have it all taken away from you. You play as Link with 20 heart containers, a bow, bombs, a sword, him at his peak basically, going through a very short dungeon. At the end of it is Ganon, because who else would the villain be? Holding Zelda captive again, because who else would be the damsel in distress here? Contained in a giant rupee, because what else would she be held in? Anyway, this fight, despite being a tutorial fight and Link's overwhelming strength, kicked my ass a few times, seriously. I died multiple times in this fight. It's not one of those where you can just spam attacks until he dies. You have to actually try to dodge his attacks and get the pattern down. I mean, still easy though. But it's not normal for. This is probably actually the hardest boss fight in the game in my opinion, and it's the first one. Anyway, Ganon's death isn't the end of the story though, or else this would be a bigger waste of money than my college degree. No, this dark void swallows Link, but he uses the last moment of his life to shoot an arrow at Zelda's rupee, giving her a chance to break free. The game doesn't give you a chance to rest though, throwing a Super Metroid only 10 minutes in. Zelda doesn't seem to be too fazed by all of this. She's walking awfully casually for a possible life-ending situation like this, but she escapes and makes her way back to the castle to see her father. All over the kingdom, these rifts have appeared, swallowing citizens throughout Hyrule, and holy shit. The king and his ministers get swallowed up too, and then are replaced by doppelgangers. Order regards to lock Zelda up. In her cell, she meets with a magical fairy, Tree, who gives her the tree rod, a magical staff able to replicate objects. The two escape from the castle, and it's off to the races. So, let's talk about gameplay first. The aspect the game revolves around are echoes, you know, the thing in the title. When Zelda comes into contact with a new object, she can learn how to replicate it, and then utilize it to either help platform, fight enemies, or solve puzzles. Not only can she copy objects, but enemies too. In fact, a lot of fighting, at least early on, involves creating enemies to fight other foes. Of course, I like to use the spiky guy the most. You can just spam it to kill almost everything in seconds. Some enemy echoes are used in puzzles, either creating a rope to climb up or burning stuff. You can spawn multiple echoes at the same time, and typically, the better the echo, the more energy it takes up. To destroy them, press ZR, or hold it to reset every single one. This variety of powers reminds me a lot of Kirby or the Shantae games. It's very different than any other Zelda that's come before it, and I'm all for that. One complaint I do have is how very little too many echoes. Sometimes you'll get stumped, but it's kind of hard to problem solve when you have like 50 different echoes. But in actuality, not really, as a lot of echoes are pretty much useless after one or two uses. Or, you know, pretty much maybe they're not even useful once. Switching between them can be quite cumbersome too, with just how many there are, and how you can only equip one at a time. It's not a perfect system, that's for sure, yet I still like it. Later in the game, Various echoes can be combined to create automations. Surprisingly, Dompe is the one to be able to create them. I'm so glad they gave him a role other than being an absent-minded gravedigger. I basically never used any of the automations, mostly because by the time I remembered to visit Dompe, the game was basically over. But it's still a cool idea, right? The Bad Echo is the most OP by far. You can use it to restore HP at any time, as long as enemies aren't on your tail. While it's a lot tougher to die because of this, it's somewhat balanced by foes dealing a lot more damage than they typically do in other Zeldas. Seriously, some of these enemies can wipe half your health bar in seconds. It's kind of insane. Jumping is back for the first time in a while. I know a lot of Zelda purists out there are probably disgusted by this. Me though, I like having a jump button. Plus, there's all these side-scrolling levels throughout the game, and it wouldn't really be possible to play them without it. Coming from 3D Zelda is Z-targeting, although I forget it's there like all the time, or most of the time at least. With X, Zelda can do this cool telekinetic technique to move things around or to screw around with enemies. With R, does this cool spin move that's really fun to use and helps you get around faster. The one big flaw in fighting, however, is there's not quite an easy to use basic attack like a sword. Well, there is, sort of. You see, by pressing up on the D-pad, Zelda can transform into a ghostly Link with his sword, bombs, bow and all. The one catch though is it uses up an energy meter. Run out of energy, and you can no longer transform into Link and use his tools and instead have to spawn echoes to fight for you. Restoring this meter isn't as easy as magic either. Only certain enemies drop this energy, or certain smoothies can restore it. But still, this is a problem. I wish Zelda had some attack, like a sword or a fire rod or something else. I mean, I guess you can just spam Spinies, but it's just not the same. My favorite thing about Echoes of Wisdom by far is the world. I did not expect to have this much fun exploring it. There's so many treasures hidden throughout. The world has a sense of wonder, absent from so many modern games, especially since a lot of it can be explored early on. A crap ton of heart pieces can be collected very early on into the game too, since there are no dungeon items or anything holding you back. The world is massive too, but don't fret about getting lost or it taking forever to get anywhere. All around the map are these cactus looking things. Interact with it and it acts as a warp point. Even better, warping doesn't require some song, just opening up a map and a mere button press. And on top of that, the game is not stingy with its warp points. There are tons of them, sometimes even if it's only a 30-second walk from the last one. Heck, even dungeons have multiple of them. This makes backtracking and traveling around the world a piece of cake. It's one of the best aspects of Echoes by far. So, remember those rifts? Well, a big part of the story is fixing them. You find an entrance and go inside. A mini level commences, where the player has to rescue a number of Tree's friends to fix the rift. These are kind of like mini dungeons, although super brief. But I do wish the music that played varied. I'll probably have this song stuck in my head for the rest of my life at this point. Throughout the story, Zelda visits various lands to fix these rifts. All the typical people, Zoras, Gorons, Gerudos, and Dekus. I do all like these guys. I just wish the series would be a little more creative with its races and stuff, and just look at all the species in Mario games. Anyway, the plots to each land are at least a bit different. You help these two Zora tribes settle their differences and work together, and I have to say that the Sea Zora chief, Kushura, is the hottest character in the game. A Gerudo story arc involves the Gerudo Queen not believing her daughter when she says Zelda can fix rifts, until their advisor turns out to be another phony, and then they believe Zelda. The Gorons have a new chief, who doesn't quite understand how to lead quite yet, and his arc revolves around him learning how to follow in his father's footsteps to become a great leader. Then there's Herba Mountain, with Conde, a Yeti, waiting for his brother to return. Not anything all that interesting happens here, to be honest, but Conde is adorable. Too bad he never sees his brother return. And lastly are the Dekus, who are by far the best. Unlike the other races of Hyrule, they like the rifts, turning the webs from the spiders into rifts into cotton candy. And I love how Tree has to tell Zelda not to eat anything the Dekus make. The Dekus act all childish, even throwing Zelda in jail for fixing a rift. They may be annoying, yet they have the most personality and character out of all the peoples throughout the game, so I like them. The temples are pretty good. None are insanely annoying or difficult, they aren't all that long, and the bosses are incredibly easy. Plus, once again, there are warps within temples, meaning you don't have to backtrack all that much, which again is nice. The only time I ever got stuck was in the Gerudo Temple, where I have to make echoes of statues found within, and put them on these pedestals to progress, but there are so many echoes and so many useless echoes that I never thought to do that. Other than that though, it's an easy ride. While that all sounds great, I don't know, I never quite got the satisfaction that I got with Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, where making progress felt really good, like a weight off my shoulders. Whenever I cleared a temple and Echoes of Wisdom, I just felt meh. A lot of that is due to there not being a new dungeon item in each one, nothing to explore the world with afterwards, to see what new things you can do. You do get linked items for Swordmaster mode and some of them halfway through though, it's just not the same. Collectibles are a staple of Zelda, and I'm happy to say that there are plenty in Echoes of Wisdom. There is a grand total of 40 heart pieces, almost all of which are super easy to get, and obtainable early on. The only ones that gave me trouble were the ones that were given after side quests. Not hard per se, just time consuming, and I'm just incredibly grateful that the ones that involve minigames are super easy. To upgrade Zelda's energy or weapon power in sword mode, these might crystals are required. Some are gifted from fixing rifts, some from side quests, or some are just out in the open. There are a lot of these. I didn't collect anywhere near all of them, just enough to upgrade my energy to its max level, and weapons once or twice. Tree gains XP from fixing rifts, leveling up from time to time, increasing how many echoes can be used at once. Then there's equipment, which is divided into two categories, clothes and accessories. I missed out on most of the clothes, but I did get a lot more of the useful equips. They do things like make Zelda jump higher or cut down energy consumption. More stuff can be equipped if you visit the Great Fairy. Yeah, the Great Fairy as in singular. It's not like Ocarina of Time or the upgrade stats. On top of that, she charges Zelda to do so. What a ripoff. Ocarina of Time's Great Fairies may be hideous, but at least they help out for free. Food items are everywhere. They can restore a little health, yet are meant to be used to make smoothies. Real fast though, I hate when you go out of your way to get a treasure chest, only for it to be a food item or some rubies. That minor nitpick aside, these smoothies can restore health, energy, or give a temporary stat boost. I really love how they don't need empty bottles to use, they don't cost that much to make, and you can store up to 20 of them at a time. That is awesome. Because of this, along with the upgrades to your energy meter and the energy boosting equips, towards the end of the game, those drawbacks I mentioned earlier begin to become less annoying with Sword Fighter mode. Still, I wish you didn't have to use Sword Fighter mode so scarcely. The last collectible are bottles, which aren't used for items, they can hold fairies to revive you when you die. A flaw in the game expressed by many is some serious slowdown at times. I can indeed say that yes, there is a fair bit of slowdown. It's not as bad as some people make it out to be though. For one, most of the lagging hardly ever takes place in battles or platforming segments, usually in towns for some reason, so it's not like you're ever gonna die because of it. Secondly, it feels a lot slower watching footage than it does playing the game. And thirdly, you get used to it pretty fast. By the end of my journey, I was so used to it, I had completely forgotten that it was even a thing. It's understandable though, since the Switch is 7 years old now, and the hardware it has was pretty much already outdated when it launched in 2017. I still cannot wait for the Switch's successor to launch, so we can hopefully have less instances of this in the future, well at least for a little bit. Graphically, I like the way the game looks. It has this clay-like aesthetic, just like the Link's Awakening remake. I like it when characters have black dots for eyes. It almost kinda reminds me of Earthbound in a way. Speaking of that series, if it ever did get a new game or a remake somehow, I really hope it has an art style similar to this. Maybe based off the clay models, that would be sweet. The only thing I don't like about the art style of Echoes is sometimes when characters are shocked, they look like those characters from the Kroger ad. And now I'm nostalgic for 2021. As the journey goes on, Zelda rescues those lost by the rifts. General Wright, Minister Leffe, who is not bad looking if I do say so myself, and her dad. But still no progress in finding Link. That though, gets me to what I really appreciate about Echoes. Zelda is the main star for once, yet Link isn't torn down to prop Zelda up. Throughout the game, you meet characters who know Link, talking about how heroic and capable he is. No one casts him aside or forgets about him. Even his reason for needing rescued doesn't diminish him, falling for a trap he couldn't foresee, and using his last moments to help Zelda escape. Additionally, compared to many other game franchises with princesses who need rescuing, Zelda isn't only a damsel in distress, being a big part in final boss fights, helping Link in various situations and holding her own. So flipping their roles doesn't have the same whiplash it does if, let's say, Peach and Mario's roles got reversed. A legend tells of a priestess and hero that'll save the world. Zelda is the priestess, and Link obviously is the hero. In the second half of the game, Zelda actually rescues the goddesses that created Hyrule. Yes, that's right, we actually get to meet the goddesses. They explain what the cause of these rifts are. Null, an entity that existed in the void before time. They've been trying to destroy creation, but tree species have worked to counteract him and fix the voids before they get too large. Null now seeks to destroy creation again, and each of the goddesses gives Zelda their sanctions. When she gets all three of them, Null echoes Zelda, taking her form. They enter the resting place of the Triforce, but it breaks, and she only gets one of the Triforces of Courage, a staple of nearly every Zelda scene that involved a Triforce. The Triforce of Wisdom goes to Zelda, and the Triforce of Courage goes to Link, finally showing up once again in person. The two now need to work together to defeat Null. However, in the final dungeon, Zelda has to give Link's items back to him, meaning for the endgame you can't use Sword Fighter mode, and are back to only being able to use Echoes to fight. Thankfully, the last area is short, only taking a few minutes to complete, and now it's final boss time. Null takes on many forms, teleports around the stage, retreats in the voids, and spawns all kinds of echoes. It's a very different boss fight to say the least. You, as the player, aren't the one dealing damage. Link and your echoes are. Link is a master fighter too, playing better than I ever could. Your echoes will die all the time, so be sure to spawn them frequently, and maybe sometimes use Tree to hold Null in place. It's not a super difficult boss, although that could just be because I had every heart container and tons of helpful accessories. As the fight goes on, Null disintegrates more and more, before Link and Zelda enter one last struggle, where you have to mash A, and I really hate when games pull this, but at least it's over now. Null is defeated, the world is saved, all the rifts are mended, and Tree has to say goodbye to Zelda forever. After an emotional goodbye, Zelda returns to her home, where her and Link celebrate together with the people their triumph. The credits play, showing the fates of the game's characters, and the story closes with a close-up of the Tri-Rod on the castle wall. The end. Overall, Echoes of Wisdom is a great Zelda. I would put it on my top 10 favorite Zeldas and my second favorite 2D Zelda after A Link to the Past. It does a lot different than the previous entries, and while it doesn't all land, it is a lot of fun. Jumping, making echoes, the vast open world, abundance of warps, generous smoothie space, and the loads of collectibles come together to make a unique journey. But the characters feel a bit boring and generic. Attacking is more complicated than it needs to be, and the performance issues keep it from ranking higher on my list of favorite Zeldas. It is worth checking out, and a great Zelda to end the Switch with. I hope you all liked the video. Writing a script for a new game that I've never played before, and with a lack of information and discussion online, has made it a little tricky to make. And there's a lot that I skipped over or forgot to talk about. At least this isn't another 50-minute video though. Oh man, I'm sick of making those. Anyway, if you liked the video, be sure to subscribe, comment, like, all that. And maybe if this video does well enough, I'll continue this trend of making videos on new games, with the next Mario and Luigi coming out next month. Until then though, have a great Halloween and a great day. Bye.